So if you call them out on their emotionally immature behavior and ask them, don't you see it? Are you not listening to yourself? Then I'll tell you what you're going to experience, not their insight, but their rage. It's like thunder and lightning. First you see the crack of lightning, then you hear the clap of thunder. With narcissistic people, first they experience their shame, and then, just like the thunder, comes the rage. This is a brief series on the things to not say to a narcissist. These are statements that just get you into trouble and back you into a deeper corner. By learning how to avoid these potholes, you may be able to take a difficult situation and hopefully make it a little bit more manageable. So in this series, we're going to talk again, what not to say to a narcissist. What are we going to talk about today? I don't want you to get mad. This is actually a bad thing to say to anyone because at some level it's manipulative and sort of a pre-gaslight. Basically, you're saying to someone, I don't want you to have a reaction. That's not a cool move. You can't get ahead of an angry tiger, or you can't get ahead of emotion. You just say what you're going to say and be with the consequence. Now, while this statement does not work, I don't think it should be used with anyone. It puts people on edge, right? Knowing that bad or angering news is coming. This statement definitely doesn't work with narcissistic people. Because narcissistic people so often have angry reactions, often very reactive angry reactions, over time it can feel scarier and scarier to talk to them. So we have to find a way to dance through the minefield. People try all kinds of things, gray rocking, eggshell walking, not telling them anything at all, or telling them only small bits of it. But trying to get ahead of it and saying, I have something to tell you, but I don't want you to get mad, is like pulling the pin on a grenade and asking it to not explode. As I have said in past videos, narcissism is a threat monitoring condition. Narcissistic people are constantly monitoring to avoid threats and anything that could activate shame. So when you tell them that a threat is coming, every defensive cell in their psyche gets activated. So you could say, hey, I am going to tell you something and I don't want you to get mad. And then you could tell them about something completely innocuous, and I guarantee you they will still blow up at you. But in most cases, let's face it, you're using this language, I don't want you to get mad at me, to get ahead of their anger, operating under the incorrect assumption that you are trying to prepare them and that somehow they'll adjust their expectations. They won't, and it won't work. Instead, what will happen is that you will find that their on-edgeness at the impending threat means that they will blow up even more, either because now they are sensitized to the bad news and really get angrier, or feel that your big buildup was not worth the disclaimer and believe that you are pandering to them or viewing them as unhinged or fragile, and then rage at you for being overly dramatic or viewing them as a hothead. Narcissistic people don't like being viewed as dysregulated or rageful, and that kind of prelude, promise me you won't get mad, plays on their neurotic concern that they are being painted as a person with a short fuse, which is not how they self-identify, and they resent that implication. And in fact, it may evoke shame about past times they've shown rage. So when it comes to these situations, I gave this guidance actually in Should I Stay or Should I Go in my book. If you're going to give a narcissistic person bad news, try to solve the problem as well as you can yourself and then expect the worst when you tell them. If you are thinking of giving them feedback, especially criticism, don't, because it won't end well. And if you want to give them good news about yourself, deliver that good news about yourself to other people first so you can experience genuine joy and happiness from those other people before the narcissistic person downplays it, and understand that sometimes you have to tell the truth about a situation and they will rage at you, and that's that. I know that people think that maybe they can try and vaccinate against an angry reaction by saying this. It's just not how it works. Telling someone to not get angry pings numerous spaces of shame, threat, and other places that will typically backfire on you when you talk to someone narcissistic. So this is one of those times, I don't want you to get angry at me. That's never a good thing to say to anyone, but I can tell you this one, given the number of you that have gotten numerous angry reactions from narcissistic people, trying to use this with them. I want to tell you something, but I don't want you to get mad. Like I said, it's the equivalent of pulling a pin on a grenade and expecting it to not explode. They're going to explode. Don't give the disclaimer. Just go right in there and see how it goes. And ideally, if you can, avoid telling them. But that's not always possible, and I get that. Hope that clarifies one of the many things that you need to remember to never say to a narcissist unless you feel like dealing with their adult tantrum. Oh, have you ever encountered this? Have you ever said, like, God, all I told them was good news, and they blew up on me? Why? Because one of the things you should not be saying to a narcissist is good news. You're like, say what? Yeah, good news. And this could be any kind of good news. I got a promotion. I got a raise. I got an award. I won a prize. My friends are taking me away for a special weekend. My birthday is next week. Any kind of good news. And you think, what could go wrong? This isn't criticism. This isn't feedback. This isn't even about them. Why can't I share good news? Because in a narcissistic person, it activates that inadequacy, insecurity, jealousy, and envy that are all massive triggers and bringers of shame in narcissistic people. This pattern of getting raged at, or getting passive-aggressive stuff, or the silent treatment, or contempt for just telling them something good is actually what really confuses people in these relationships. For some of you, this was a pattern that was manifested even in childhood, when a narcissistic, neglectful, or egocentric parent would not take notice of your good news. They would minimize it, or not listen to it, or contemptuously dismiss it. Say things to you like, okay, big shot, and okay, let's just go see if you could win that again. Maybe that was just a lucky one-time thing. Or they might say to you, ugh, come on, these awards, whatever this nonsense is, it only matters if you can make some money at it. Or, doesn't every kid in your school get a trophy these days? These are the same parents that in childhood and then in adulthood, people often feel compelled to please over and over again. But no matter what you do or how you are recognized, they don't care. And that's not because you aren't enough. You are. It's because the people who are narcissistic are empty and egocentric, in this case, your parents. A narcissistic parent is unable to understand that everything isn't about them, and that your award was a moment of joy for you, and that a parent is supposed to be unconditionally about their kids. And even if you are 45 years old, you'll see, you're still getting awards and accolades, those parents won't care any more than they cared about that award you got when you were 5 years old. Sadly, this pattern can then trail people into adulthood when they have narcissistic partners, friends, or workplaces. Same drill. Let's say then you tell your narcissistic partner something great that happened to you, or it's just something good that happened to you. And you'll see your narcissistic partner will either get grumpy or passive-aggressive or find a way, quietly or loudly, to punish you. And what's so tragic about that is that you are happy and proud of your good news, and you tell whom you believe should be the first person who would want to know. And maybe at some deep level you think, oh, I'm going to tell my partner like this. Other people think I'm great, so this will finally get their attention and validation. No, there's no magic way to get the narcissist to notice you. Rather, your good news ends up activating their inadequacy and their shame, and takes all of the wind out of your sails. And as I said, it sort of spoils the good news for you. After your partner's contempt and tantrum, you may not feel compelled to share your good news with anybody else. And that's sort of sad, right? One thing that can often happen with narcissistic people when you share good news with them is that they'll meet it, or respond to your good news with a cruel minimizing and mocking contempt. For example, you might say, hey, I got an award at work, and they give it out only one time a year, and there's going to be an award ceremony in a few weeks. The narcissistic person will respond with stuff like, ugh, that ceremony's when there's traffic. That's really inconvenient. Or, wow, all this award stuff matters to you. Why do you need to be the center of attention? Oh, God, your whole life is look at me. Everyone celebrate me. And then you expect me to sit in traffic and then eat some rubber chicken dinner so you can get some plaque worth $10? Honestly, when you really, finally, actually, really make it in a real job, maybe you won't need all that attention. Maybe you need all these plaques. And then you may give them the date. Maybe you're foolish enough to give them the date of the event, and then they'll either cancel at the last minute or tell you that they can't make it, or they'll come and maybe be grumpy the whole time. But you getting all the attention for a whole evening, that's just too much for them to bear. And your heart will break because that's that. You're proud because you know those things aren't true about you. You're proud. You did good work. It got recognized. But with those words, the entire experience can get cheapened, especially if you don't fully understand narcissism. But at this point, you better. They may not be that obvious, though, in their contempt. I'm giving you sort of a dramatic example. They may do more of a subtle passive-aggressive approach. You tell them about the award, and then you get back, okay, great. So on top of my existing bad day, now I have to hear how great your day is. Listen, I can't be bothered with going out to dinner tonight and celebrate. I have a deadline. Or you might get like a, whoop-de-doo, I can't get a break, can I? And then they will stay on that sad sack victimized rant for a while. And that's going to have the same effect on you as them directly insulting you. And despite your pride and happiness about your award, you may hold back and just stop talking about it. Then it may extend to you not wanting to share the news with anyone anymore because it felt so bad to share it with this one person. A piece of advice I have given to people for many years, and that appears repeatedly in my books and seminars, is when you get a piece of good news in your life, you need to tell everyone who has your back, all the good people in your life first. Your good friends, any family members you have that may be good and kind, anyone who will be happy for you. Start there. Drink up their joy and happiness and celebration and be happy with them. And then, at some point, after you've had that experience, if you have to tell, you tell the narcissist or not. I actually remember having an experience of this in the last year or two. I had developed and done something kind of neat, and I'd gotten some really great feedback on it. And I was in the presence of an invalidating person in my life. But then a really sweet, kind person in my life, this a third party in this conversation, was an old friend and heard about my new thing and said, hey, I want to see pictures of this new thing. I'm so excited. And she had heard about it from someone else. So I pulled out my phone and I shared the picture, and the really sweet, kind friend got so excited. She's like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful, Ramani. I'm so proud of you. She gave me a big hug. It was very sweet. And it felt so nice because this person is so kind, so genuine, and I was actually proud of it. What was very interesting was the invalidating person in my life, who's actually pretty close to me, said, why didn't you tell me about this? Why didn't you show me? The invalidating person was actually getting a little defensive as to why they had not been included ahead of time. Why didn't they know about this? Why are they just finding about it now? And I didn't tell that invalidating person originally because I knew they would have said something snarky or minimized it, and that would have hurt me, so there was no point. I just shrugged and I said, I didn't think it was that big a deal. But interestingly, the invalidating person then became sulky for the rest of the night. No doubt that sense of shame they were then feeling about not being in the know. You can't win with a narcissist, but I felt better. Because I was unsure about this new thing I had done. And I knew that the narcissist would have not been encouraging. And it really felt good to have that really sweet friend be so happy. I knew the narcissistic person was going to get sulky either way, and this way I protected myself, and I didn't have to go through the hurtful experience of their indifference. It was ironic they happened to be at the situation where this other person was. Had they not, they never would have found out. Sharing good news is a very easy trap to fall into with narcissists. Sometimes you can't get around it. Your good news may become public, and so they may learn it. And then they may get angry that they learned it off of social media or some other public source and not from you directly. If that happens, you could play with it a little bit and say, I didn't think it was that big a deal. I don't want to talk about these things that happened to me. But keep in mind, that's not going to work if it's you sharing it on social media. The narcissistic people often almost feel angry that they don't get to be the ones to hear it first because they feel entitled to everything in your life and then comment on it. Their entitlement is such that they feel entitled to knowing everything and trashing it or accepting it as they see fit. It's an interesting form of baiting. However, that anger that you're ultimately going to get from them anyhow is maybe worth it to get positive feedback from healthy people before the narcissist rains on your parade, because the narcissist always rains on your parade. Shame activation is such a universal experience for narcissistic people, and everything seems to bring it up, both the good news and bad news. So I would say this: think twice before you ask them to be the one to accompany you to any event where you are the focus, whether that's a birthday party, an award ceremony, or other fete or party or something where people will be honoring you in some way. Or at a minimum, may I suggest, take 2 cars. I have seen this happen so many times. The healthy person is, being honored or celebrated. The narcissist goes along and will either drink too much or claim to be sick or exhausted or have a headache or be bored or just get sullen and sulky in the corner, and you will feel compelled to get them out of there or leave with them, and there will be only 1 car. Think ahead and recognize that I can almost guarantee that they will ruin your night. Ideally, they don't come in the first place, but if that is unavoidable, always make sure you have a plan B in place. Sometimes the only way to get ahead of this is the workarounds. Your good news is their shame activator. So make sure you share it with those who are worthy and make it an afterthought for the narcissistic people in your life. You will not be sorry you do this. Stop like a little child running to the narcissist with the good news thinking this is what's going to win them over. It's not. They're probably going to get angry, and you lose that precious opportunity to just be with something good. Be with it good first, and just like my experience where the invalidating person's like, oh, why didn't I know about this? You can then play it off, but have those moments of joy first. So much joy gets robbed from these relationships in the first place. You do need to be strategic in how you present stuff to them and recognize you can't forever be in that role of the 6-year-old child who's waiting for a mother or a father to praise their drawing. If it didn't happen then, it ain't going to happen now. And if you have a narcissistic adult in your life, it's going to be exactly the same thing. They do not like watching anybody else's parade. Remember that. Have you ever asked a narcissist this question? Do you listen to yourself? Have you ever asked a narcissist that question? Sometimes by learning the things to not say, you can actually make the rather bumpy road of a relationship with a narcissist a little bit of a more survivable space. But let's go to this idea. Asking or saying to the narcissist, do you ever listen to yourself? Now, this is definitely not a good thing to say to a narcissist, but it's so tempting to say it, right? Nonetheless, do you ever listen to yourself? When you have to listen to the gaslighted, delusional, manipulative, victimized rants that come out of them, you just want to ask them, are you listening to yourself? As always, I am telling you to avoid saying all the various things I'm going to tell you in this series as they unfold, because if you cave into that, you're going to be left facing their dysregulated rage. And let me tell you, even if you feel a momentary satisfaction by saying these things to them or asking them these questions, their rage is actually really, really uncomfortable, miserable experience to have to be in the face of. So why would you want to ask them this question? Mostly because what they're saying doesn't make sense. Are you listening to yourself? Many people who are experiencing narcissistic relationships will be so confused by what they are hearing that they will first doubt themselves and think, maybe I'm hearing this wrong, or maybe I'm seeing this as worse than it is, or I'm so confused, or maybe they're right. All of that That's what the gaslighting does to us. It leaves us questioning our entire reality and ourselves. But the reason this is a bad question is because it misses the damaging alchemy of two key patterns in narcissistic people. Their lack of ability to be self-reflective, to really think about themselves, and their lack of insight, and their emotional dysregulation and their impulsivity. People with narcissistic personality styles lack insight. It's central to this personality style. They are unable to think about how their behavior affects other people. And that is also in large part due to their lack of empathy. Because even if they did know, they don't care. And there's also a lack of capacity to think deeply about feelings, motivations, or behavior in people who are narcissistic. There's a very infantile organization to the narcissistic personality. And so sort of higher order levels of thought, like we should see in adult, such as the implications of what they are saying or how the message could be received, it doesn't even enter their minds. But for a minute, let's give folks who have narcissistic personalities a little bit of credit. Because let's face it, they are not psychotic. They are not completely devoid of insight. They're not completely absent of the capacity for rational thought. After all, narcissistic people are highly successful in society. So even if they do have a little self-reflective capacity, for example, narcissistic people know how to schmooze a new client to get them to buy something. They know how to be nice to the boss. They're skillful at taking their rage out on people who don't have much power. So ultimately, what really does the narcissist in, it's not just that lack of empathy and that lack of self-reflection, it's the impulsivity. When a narcissistic person is having a strong feeling or belief, they just have to say it. Inhibition is not in their vocabulary. This impulsivity is why we see their high levels of reactivity, their disinhibited rage, even the dangerous driving. Narcissistic people just say it first and maybe, just maybe, might apologize later, and they'll come up with some kind of sad justification after the fact. And then, since they are dysregulated, they turn around and they do it again. Narcissism is all about tension reduction. They do not like it when strong feelings come up in them, or when they feel inadequate, or when they feel abandoned. So they just have to let those uncomfortable feelings out. And then they often will say bizarre, menacing, terrifying, confusing, threatening, angering, and or hurtful things. So if you were to say to them, "Are you listening to yourself?" When they hear that from you, it activates their shame. In fact, I can all but guarantee it will. After one of their infantile breakdowns, they don't like it being shown to them, or it being pointed out to them, or being reminded of it. So if you call them out on their emotionally immature behavior and ask them, "Don't you see it? Are you not listening to yourself?" Then I'll tell you what you're going to experience, not their insight, but their rage. It's like thunder and lightning. First you see the crack of lightning, then you hear the clap of thunder. With narcissistic people, first they experience their shame, and then, just like the thunder, comes the rage. If you ask them are you listening to yourself? They will actually blame you for their meltdown and take no responsibility for their conduct. And it can be extremely frustrating and confusing to listen to that. So the best play? Don't ask the question in the first place. The short answer of, should I ask this question? No. Even if they are listening to themselves, even if they were, they don't want to be held accountable. Remember, taking responsibility is not something we ever observe in the narcissistic personality style. And the fact is, they don't care enough about you or your feelings or anyone else to stop themselves. That impulsivity is more important than anything else. This question to a narcissist, "Are you listening to yourself?" is never going to get an honest or clear answer from somebody with a high conflict personality style. So ideally, don't ask it. Because here's the thought. Maybe the narcissistic folks are smarter than the rest of us. You know why? They know better. And they often don't listen to themselves. maybe we should take a page out of that playbook and not listen to them either. But this is a key thing, to not ask people who are narcissistic this question. What's going to come back at you is not good for you. It's not going to move the needle. It's probably going to make things worse. And you're just going to have to accept they can't self-reflect. They're very impulsive. And the combination of all that means, no, they're not listening to themselves. And if they were, they're going to blame you for it.
Why should you never ask a narcissist why? Have you ever done that? Have you ever asked a narcissist why? Why do you do X or Y? Why do you think da 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 da? In essence, one of the big frustrations of being with a narcissist is simply not understanding. You feel like you're losing your mind. You're incredibly confused, and you want to understand why they're doing what they're doing, and do they even get what they're doing? So take a minute. When you ask someone why, what is it you want to understand? I wish I could talk to you about this directly, because many of you would be saying, well, I want to understand why. And why in psychology gets at motivation. What motivates us to do what we do? So, the simplest example, why do I eat? Ideally, because I'm hungry. Why do I sleep? Because it's night, or because I'm tired. Why do I curse? Fuck, because I'm mad. So we could, if somebody said, Rom, why are you cursing? I'd say, because I'm pissed. So then the person will say, oh, okay. At least they'll understand why. So when a narcissist gaslights you, when a narcissist verbally abuses you and other people notice it, when a narcissist literally starts getting on their phone when you start talking, but when they're talking, you're watching them like this. When those things happen, it is so natural, isn't it, to want to know why. Why are you doing this? I recently had someone ask me, and she'd asked me, she said, I went up to my narcissistic partner and asked him, like, why do you do this? When your sister la la la, or I asked your sister da 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 da. This person was desperate to understand why the narcissist does what in this case what he did. So here's what's unfortunate, gang. They're never going to be able to give you an answer to this question, and whatever answer they give you is going to be so deeply unsatisfying that you're going to be more confused and upset than you were when it began. And there's a simple reason for this. You ready? Narcissists don't know their why. They're actually very unclear on their motivations. Because let me tell you this, because this is where the mindfuck is. They do not wake up in the morning and saying, ha ha ha, I'm going out to gaslight, and then I'm going to do some manipulating, and by 3 o'clock it's time for exploitation, and then at 7 o'clock I'm going to lie. That's not how they go through the day. They go through their day to do one thing and one thing only. And that's to protect their fragile ego. And they protect their fragile ego by seeking out validation, being grandiose, being really superficial, acting really entitled, and not bothering themselves with the feelings of other people. That's how they protect that insecure, fragile ego. One thing they're not going to say to you is, oh, the reason I ignored you at that party is actually my ego was fragile. So in order to protect my fragile ego, I had to flirt with your friend. And by doing that, I got lots of validation. So then my ego felt good again. And that's why at the end of the evening, I was doing better. They're not going to give you that answer. So stop looking for it. You will drive yourself nuts if you try to get them to cop to it and come clean. That's why you never ask a narcissist why. You don't say, why did you cheat on me? Why did you steal my stuff? Why did you steal my ideas? Why did you hurt my feelings? Why did you ignore me? Why did you respond? Why did you come to my party? Why don't you care? I'm going to be honest with you. They don't know the answer. Whatever answer they give you is either going to be gaslighting and denial. I didn't ignore you. That never happened. I'm not like that. Or they're going to put it back on you and say, well, remember that time that you did that to me? That's the best question. That's the best answer you're going to get to the question, why? So to save your sanity, you already know the answer. The why is because they're trying to protect their fragile egos. And everything they do is designed to protect that part of themselves and get as much narcissistic supply as quickly as they can. So next time you want to ask them why did you like that girl's bikini pictures? It hurt my feelings. You already know the answer.
Today I'm going to kind of go on a little rant about something. It's a mistake all of us make in our conversations. And this is not just a mistake made by people who are narcissistic. It's made by all of us. I think we see this mistake, it's more pronounced in narcissistic relationships, but I think it happens to all of us. So we're all guilty of it. So let's hear, you're going to clean up your relationship act today. And what is it? What is the one mistake question we ask in relationships? When we go up to someone, we make the mistake sometimes of making assumptions about how they're feeling. And how do we do this most classically? We go up to someone, partner, family member, and they're just doing their thing, or maybe they're frustrated, and you go up to them and you say, why are you angry? Now, if that person never said, I am angry, then you're making a big conceptual leap. And actually, more often than not, people find it offensive. So you're having a conversation with someone. At no point do they ever say they're angry. Maybe they raise their voice and you assume they're angry, but you are assuming it. So when you ask someone, why are you so angry? Why are you so annoyed? That's one surefire way to annoy a person, because you've made an assumption about their intention and their emotional state. Now the person you've just said, why are you angry? They're either going to find themselves in a position where they have to defend themselves, I'm not angry, or they may gaslight you. But in somewhat level on that one, that was a question you shouldn't have asked that way in the first place, because you made an assumption. The only time you can ever accurately ask someone, why are you angry, is if they say to you first, hey, Ramani, I'm really angry. At that point, me saying, why are you angry, is a very logical question. But if I just roll up to someone, roll up to my child, roll up to my partner, and I say to him, hey, why are you angry? I would be willing to bet $1,000 that the first thing he'd say to me is, Ram, I'm not angry, whether it's true or not. So when you say, why are you angry or why are you annoyed, you're never going to get an accurate answer, because it's pretty rare that people are going to cop to it. Number two, you're more likely to actually get an angry, more defensive reaction from them. I'm not angry. And then number three, especially if you do this to somebody who has a narcissistic personality style, now this whole thing's going to explode. And what's very likely to happen is you may innocently enough say to someone, why are you angry? And then they'll blow up back at you. I'm not angry, but blah, 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 word salad. Okay? So the question becomes, why do we do this? It's okay for me to ask that. Why? Why do we do this? Why do we ask that question? Why are you angry at me? Why are you annoyed at me? Or the other thing that's sometimes a mistake, people think, are you mad at me? Are you feeling upset about the relationship? You've just put words in their mouth. Nobody likes having words be put in their mouth. But when you ask that question, why are you angry? Why are you annoyed? Are you not liking this relationship anymore? Are you not feeling it anymore? Are you wishing you were with someone else? Those questions that all make massive assumptions. We all have to be honest with ourselves. When we ask that question, we're asking for reassurance. So it comes down to you being as clear on your motivations, very clear on your motivations, before you make assumptions about somebody else's. Again, we do it all the time. I must do this 10 times a day. Part of this comes from the anxiety that a person can experience. Now, let's talk first about people who have long-standing histories of narcissistic abuse. It's very easy in those situations where emotion was a mystery when you grew up like that. Like, are they angry? Because if they were angry, parent was angry, older sibling was angry, some other family member was angry, it could have been quite unsettling and catastrophic. rage, anger, maybe even domestic violence, like it was actually helpful. It might have felt strategic or safe if you knew the emotional states of the people in the house. Like, ooh, if I know dad's angry, then I can stay away from him. So that idea of assuming and making assumptions about other people's emotions might have once served a protective feature, but it doesn't play as well in adulthood. Okay? So is that sense of safety we're trying to create. We're also, there's such a sense of unsureness that comes from being gaslighted over a lifetime, or we're not sure of anything. Do they want to be with me? Are they unhappy with me? There's a lot of that can come after lifelong gaslighting or even a history of trauma. So we're often asking for reassurance, but if you're in a relationship with somebody who keeps asking for reassurance, it does become rather exhausting after a while. So you might be thinking, well, what if I see my partner and my partner seems angry? What am I supposed to ask them? You can ask them things like, how are you feeling? You doing okay? How's your day going? I'm not saying you're going to get straight answers from them. If you're dealing with a gaslighter, if you're dealing with a narcissist, I'm not saying, are you okay? How are you feeling? Or any of those other things are going to yield you a good answer. But you're less likely to get into a big word salad argument than if you had put the question as, why are you angry at me? Also, think to yourself, how would you feel if somebody came up to you and said to you, why are you angry at me? Because especially if you're not, you're like, I'm not. But if you were, would you give them a straight answer? So we have to really reflect on that question and figure out more clear ways to get our answers. But here's the thing, I cut everyone a break on this. It's a mistake we all make, but I understand where the mistake comes from. It comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of a lifetime of not even being confident with our own emotions. It comes from a place of wanting to create a sense of security. I get where the question comes from, but in a relationship, one of the most dangerous things you can ever do is assume. So it's always best to ask the questions, but the really painful legacy of narcissistic abuses, this is why I'm saying communication doesn't work in narcissistic relationships. Because even if your communication is 100% clear, hi, how are you? How are you feeling? The odds of you getting gaslighted, probably running about 80%. And then at that point, the whole thing has gone to hell because nobody's communicating clearly at that point. But catch yourself before the next time you try to make assumptions about someone and ask them questions like, why are you angry? Why are you annoyed? Why don't you like me? You've just made an assumption. And sometimes people try to get ahead of it. Like if I ask them this question, then they have to tell me the truth. Ain't nobody telling the truth. So I hope that clears up a little bit of a mistake a lot of us make, even for understandable reasons. So hopefully going forward, you don't keep falling into that trap. And then ask yourself the deeper question, why is it I'm looking for so much reassurance? That might be an issue that's more important to unpack in your own therapy. Thanks again.